Hello. I made another machine. So this is my fourth machine I've built myself. I made a rotary speaker for my organ, and a dog food dispenser, and a doorbell out of a bicycle bell. So this one, just those are kind of quite useful practical things. So this one was just for fun. So this is an arcade machine for my house. So I've been meaning to build one of these for years, actually. So when I was a kid, I was just the right age to get really caught up in video games and so on in the 70s. And one particular game really took me when I must have been 13, 14 years old, and it was Star Wars. It was an Atari game. I just never seen anything like it. It was the first time I'd seen vector graphics, which was amazing to me and continues to shaped my whole life. So I write computer software now using vector graphics mainly in CAD. And this game had a really specific controller, like a two-handed flight yoke, which is I don't think it's unique to that particular game, but you do need that or something very similar to it to really enjoy it. And you just couldn't buy them very easily. So the only chance you had of getting one was on eBay or something, or a salvaged machine from the 80s, and they were just hundreds of pounds. And then I found there's this guy in America who's making new ones now out of metal, really a lot of attention to detail, and in fact the parts inside it are much more robust than the original ones. So I got very excited about that, so I bought one of them immediately on Amazon from him, before I even really figured out what I was going to do with it. And then I thought, okay, now I think I'm going to go ahead and try to make one of these things. So let's have a look, shall we? All right, let's turn it on and we'll see how it's built and how it works, shall we? Here we are. All right, we'll start at the top. That's just some Space Invader guys on the top. That was that was agony trying to cut those out, and there are a couple of cock-ups if you look closely. So speakers, these are just PCs. Well, I bought some second-hand computer speakers, some real cheap ones. Took them to bits and wired it all up so they drop out the bottom there, and this is a little volume knob. That is just a second-hand computer monitor. I think I got it for £5 on Facebook Marketplace or something. I'm going to talk about the controls a bit more in a minute, because that's the thing that's not different. I'm not going to say unique, but different about what I've built. A little hatch for access, which I won't open yet either. And if you put a shoe rack on the bottom, then you can bring it in your house without any yelling. All right, so inside it's powered by a RetroPie system called RetroPie. Sits on a Raspberry Pi. I don't really need to talk about that too much because there's just so many videos about that already. If you want to learn about that, if you've never heard of it before, then I'd suggest there's a guy on YouTube and his channel's called ETA Prime. Really good, and I learned all about it from that guy. But yeah, it's just been done to death on YouTube, so don't need to talk about that. So the controller system, what I built. So I mentioned that the Star Wars game has a unique type of controller, and it's in there actually. So let's open this up now. There it is. So what I've built is this whole control kind of console thing. It all rotates, right? So it's got two control systems. Let me mount the camera up and then I can show you a bit better. So let's talk about controllers for a second. So there's digital controllers and there's analog controllers, right? So these are digital, these are joysticks. So these are great for something like Pac-Man, where you just need up, down, left, right, and diagonals maybe. An analog controller gives you a bit more sensitivity, so you can go a little bit left or a little bit up, whereas the digital one, they're like a bit like full lock on your car steering wheel, right? So when you want to turn left in your car, you don't necessarily go straight to full lock, you go a little bit left. So you can do that with an analog controller, but these are 100% like full lock in every direction or nothing at all, right? So some games are great for digital and some are really only playable with an analog. So I needed to figure out how to be able to use both. And I couldn't fit everything on at the same time. It's just too much to fit. So I solved that by making this console rotate inside. So I'll show you that now. I'll just flip it over and then we'll have a look at how I built it in a minute. So that opens up. Up it comes, and I've got a little pin here which holds it in place. Right, there you go. And now we have our analog controller. So this is the flight stick I was talking about earlier on. All right, so let's have a look at the spinning mechanism inside. So I don't know what that is. It doesn't look very clever, does it? So yeah, you can see the back of the digital controls there. That's the other side of the console, really, isn't it? So we've got a 10mm steel rod going all the way across the width. So you can just see behind there, there's a bearing around the side. The bearing's fixed to the cabinet side, so and on that side as well. And another bearing at each end of the actual console, and just a shaft collar to stop things sliding sideways. And that's what it spins on. And to stop it going too far, so when it's this way up, the monitor trim actually stops it spinning too far, and it's held in place by there's a pin on the side there. So these are called quick release pins. These are great. So the knobbly bit on the end, you can see there, that retracts when you press the button, so you can get them in and out. And that means that once it's in, it stays in. You can't put it out by accident. So I normally just bother with one of them. There is a hole on the other side to put the other one as well. Look. And when it's the other way up, to stop it moving too far, I've built these stoppers on each side. And in fact, I mentioned earlier that the flight yoke's really well built, which weighs a ton. Actually, it's a really heavy bit of kit. So this is actually pretty heavy. This whole assembly. So what I did was I stuck a damper, like you get these on your kitchen cabinets, just in case I let go of it one day and it goes slamming round and hits onto those bits of wood. So that works really well. So I'll just pop the camera on the mount again and just show you putting it back the other way round. There we are. So you just take the pin out over here, and then it swings back round. And you can kind of let it go once it's here, and you'll see the damper just kind of lets it down gently, and then we're back to there again. So these pins are great. Sorry to keep going on about the pins, but so it's got a thick bit and a thin bit. So in the hole, this is a metal sleeve in there, which is the diameter of the thick bit, and then deeper in. So in fact, in the hole on the rotating bit is a thinner sleeve, metal sleeve, which is that size. So it just goes all the way in, and that stops it rotating on its own, holds it in place. I just wanted to talk about the flight yoke a bit more, in case anyone's watching this and they think I'm going to get that, and I really hope you do. I'm not sponsored by the manufacturer, but it's a really great piece of kit. So here's the manual. So that's what it's called, right? GRS flight yoke, and I got mine on Amazon, right? It comes from the States, but they shipped it over. Everything's taken care of. So just a few techie bits about it, actually, in case you're a bit of a hobbyist with this stuff like I am, right? So it's got 2 triggers and 2 thumb buttons. There's also a couple of buttons on the on the underside of it, which actually, while it's this way around, I can show you. I don't know if you can see, but that right there, that's a button. So you can use that for stuff. Obviously not like a playing button, but if you need it, I think I use it as a start button and stuff like that, which you need to press occasionally. On the I think it's called a loom or harness or something. There's terminals on there where you can add a couple more buttons if you want to, right? So I've done that. So when you buy a button kit like that, you get you actually get 8 buttons with each side. I only wanted 6 really, which meant I had 2 spare buttons. So I figured out there was a guy, his name escapes me, but his YouTube explained a little bit about hooking up the extra buttons onto the yoke, so you can have, so that one there actually, the first one there is, I've set it up as a coin insert button, because I don't want to be putting money into this thing. The other one isn't used for anything currently, but the option is there to add extra buttons of your own. And one of the problems I had with it actually was that it likes to be the first controller that's plugged in, right? So everything's USB, and the flight yoke and also these things. It's just a USB connection, right? Which means there's an order into which they're recognised, if you like, by the hardware. So I found that if the flight yoke isn't the first controller, if you like, that RetroPie is aware of, it didn't want to work quite right. I forget what went wrong, but it just wasn't happy unless it was the first one. But if you're using these, then that one needs to be the first one, and that one needs to be the second one, and then that one's not used in that case. So I needed to come up with a way of, rather than, depending on what game I wanted to play, flipping around the USB connections, I thought I'd do it with a bit of programming. So there's a script file that you can write, which runs whenever you start any game up. So let me just get out of here a second, and I'll show you which file it is. It's that. So in opt retropie configs all. It's not really focusing very well, but it's called run command -on start.sh, right? So what I did, so that file runs every time you start anything. So the script I wrote, I'm sure there's a better way of doing this, but you know what I'm like. It figures out what you're running and on what system, and if it's one that I've told it needs a flight yoke, it basically swaps around the config files for RetroArch, so that it thinks that is the first controller and not that one, and vice versa for everything else. So that works perfectly. It senses what game's starting, sets up the controllers accordingly, and then it just works. All right, let's see it in action, shall we? So instead of having to put 10p in, you just press that button. Great, isn't it? All right, enough of that. Let's flip it over and see the other side. Right. So that, I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but that just ran that script that swaps around the USB ports, right? So this is the first controller in the system now. So this is going to be that Star Wars game I kept banging on about earlier. I'm not very good at that one either. That's my coin button for this one. So it's quite kind of clicky, right? But, I don't mind that. Some people might, like the one on the old arcade machine was really silent, but this uses micro switches, right, instead of just probably a leaf contact switch in the 80s. So these all last a lot longer, and they just don't wear down, you know, and they're probably even replaceable if something did go wrong. So that's one of the many things I really like about this bit of kit.
Right, I'm going in. Use force loop.
Alright, I'm gonna also just to end up just this doubles up as a really good steering wheel, actually. As it happens. So who can remember Outrun? Another miracle from my past. I think I've given away my age a bit too much here. So again, this just uses this as the controller. Alright, coin, start, off we go. I'm not very good at this one either. Well, as you can see, so what I was talking about earlier, you can turn a little bit, or you can go hard lock. You know, that's why you couldn't use a joystick for a game like this, right? Anyway, let's let that finish. So that's it. If anyone wants to ask any questions about how I built any of it, especially that scripting stuff, then by all means ask. It was a really interesting project, and I hope someone else also does this. But really, I can't recommend that thing enough. It's what started me off on the whole thing, actually.